Looking at the big stories of the day, but we still want your views at K24 TV. You can also SMS us on 21222. Even as we look at them, we want to move on and shift gears to mental health. It's an issue that has been spoken about. The president has addressed it. There's a mental health task force being put in place as well. But you look at the Standard, page 7, pastor kills wife as church watches. He stood up and approached his wife as she prayed at the pulpit, drew a sharp knife and stabbed her before turning the knife on himself. They've spoken about this. He spoke about the fact that she was unfaithful, wanted to dispossess him of the church property. This happened in Kisauni constituency in Mombasa. But you look at it and you look at the fact that Pastor Elisha Nyandoya Midika, the late, resolved this was the only way to bring a solution to whatever was going on. And clearly, there's an issue, and there's something we're not talking about because this isn't an isolated incident. We've seen this over and over again for the better part of 2019. Coming into 2020, we are seeing this as well. What's the unspoken? What aren't we speaking about, and how can we address this particular issue in Rimba? Because coming from a point of view where usually, if you had turmoil in your relationship or within yourself, you go to your pastor. But clearly, as you can see, even they aren't beholden to this particular issue. What's going on, and how do we actually mainstream this mental health conversation? Because we've had the hashtags, we've had people talk about it. How do you make sure it's something that can actually be addressed?
I think that there's a senator, is it Kasanga, Sylvia? She's working on a policy when it comes to mental health. And as a country, we actually don't have one. And it's something that we are becoming open to, because apparently it's an African to have issues with your mind. But also the fact that research does show that when economic times are hard, domestic violence does increase. Right. And so that is also something to put in mind, because not even a few days ago, there was a mother who had killed her son because of 20 shillings or things like that. So you're beginning to see where people are acting irrationally. And it's very sad to see such information such as this, because you'd think that, yeah, you are right, that a pastor, that the church is something that you'd go to in terms of forgiveness, in terms of peace, in terms of the place where you do not harm one another. Right. And the fact that it's happening there, it's something that is of concern, that we need to be able to identify early enough. Because with mental health, it's not something that just appears abruptly. There are signs, there are symptoms. Right. But unfortunately, a lot of us are unaware of those, including from a young age. Someone who is entering adulthood, you'll be able to see or tell signs. Or it can even be in the aspect of situational mental health, because we also go through depression. Right. In fact, depression is, most of us have to go through depression once in a while. But those are things that we are not open about. So I do believe that it's something that as families, from the family unit to the church to institutions, that we need to be more open about in terms of identifying, but also having centers. We cannot even name the number of rehabilitation centers that we have, or even clinics, or where people can go to, because there's that aspect of even talking to someone and sharing with someone is seen as wrong. And a lot of us shy away from that, and we don't want to be open about our thoughts and things like that. And so I think that that's something that can only change with the younger generation. And I believe that there are people out there who are doing it, and they're active in that space. I have about 5 friends who are in that space who are now doing it actively. And it's something that I believe men are the ones who shy away from even sharing their emotions. It's something that we have to have these sort of discussions with men to be able to direct their anger somewhere else. There's a man on your right. Let's direct anger somewhere else.
Is it a masculinity issue? How do you actually mainstream this mental health discussion? Because, like you see, she said the fact that, especially when it comes to men, we don't talk about it. Unakufa kimwanaume. It's a phrase.
I think that is debatable. There are men who have come out to say what ails them. The other day, the internet was awash when one of the city lawyers, came out and said he was conned of Dorcas Sarkozy, 500,000. The other day, we have seen another coming out saying, people are, they're becoming bold and bold every day. But I think by the time you go to church with 2 knives, first of all, do we have security checks into that church?
He's the
He's the
pastor.
owner of
He's the pastor.
If you are the owner of the church, are you checked? This is your church. Are you checked? You are the church and the church is you. That tells me one thing. Some of these churches, I'm not very religious, but I believe in God. But if you look at, we have seen them, the Ngangas and these ones. These are churches that are used as commercial enterprises. And that's why people are fighting for wealth that has been amassed. Because if you look at his own statement, he says the wife had taken over even the land where the church is built that he bought through pulling on Mkokoteni. So for me, I think that this is an issue of domestic quarrels in the family. And then you go, God helps you, you succeed, you get a church. Now you start fighting for the control of the church because the worshippers have been brainwashed to believe that the person who stands in front of you in the pulpit is only next to God, which is not the case. These are commercial enterprises. I've seen even people in this country calling others mom. You know? So for me, the problem here, Arnold, is...
We even call politicians Baba. Why do you want to begrudge others?
No. I think we when it comes to matters church, Jeff, we must now be very serious about this because these are religious issues. The issue that happened in this case where the husband stabbed the wife and turned the knife to himself because he feared that he will be arrested and be jailed is very unfortunate. It's unfortunate because it happened in a place where people seek protection. Number two, it's unfortunate because he killed his own wife. And then lastly, it was about wealth, not about anything else. And then now, you start looking at life differently. You realize what Verima is saying is true. When the people cannot be able to meet their daily needs, they cannot be able to put food on the table, they cannot be able to feed their children, they cannot be able to take their children to school, then they start fighting. And we have seen those frustrations in this country because of economic times, hard economic times. It is going to happen. Last year we saw where young men are butchering young women because of love, frustration. So I think it is a debate that we cannot end today. We must start talking about it, and if there are men out there who are not bold enough to come out and say they're being frustrated and they need help, Marima's told us that she has friends who can help. Come out, because when you talk about something, it is halfway solved.
Okay. Well, Kesa, let me come to you on this very quickly as we move it along. We're talking about this mental health debate because the fact that he actually sat down and thought about this being a solution to carry a knife into his own church or whichever premises to kill his wife and then take his own life, clearly at that point of view, there was an issue. At that point in time, there was an issue. How do you actually drive this mental health conversation further for all those people who are, fighting and just trying to keep it in until it implodes in such a manner?
Well, I think before I comment on how to drive the mental health conversation, I want to comment on the divorce process and sharing of the wealth after the divorce, because here the problem was, I'm going to lose all this that I've worked for. So, do we have those mechanisms on how to know how to share whatever wealth when the divorce happens? So there's also that question. And then on the mental health issue, I mean, for a person who is depressed, I'm not a professional, but I've done a bit of research. For a person who's depressed, suicide is everything. You end it, you don't feel pain, you don't think about anything, so it's a reprieve for them. Rather, that's how they think. Right. So for this person to have gotten to this point, they must have been depressed for a while before they got to that point. And did anyone see that, they were depressed? Did he even ask, seek help? And then, as we are also talking about the mental health issues, we also need to talk about the cost of mental health. It's very high. Right. The consultation fee alone that you're required to pay to see a mental health expert somewhere, I mean, for the least, I think it's about 3,000 shillings. Is everyone able to afford the 3,000 shillings? And even when you see this professional, it is not a guarantee that they are going to help you per se. They may not sit down and listen. You may get in, your symptoms and everything, and they do a prescription. So how are we addressing that aspect in terms of the cost of mental health? And I think that is where the government needs to come in very strongly to help, the citizenry.
Okay, okay. Arno, let me come to you because there are two issues that have been touched. There are first matters of the church, which I know you're very passionate about, but also let's talk about mental health with you as a man as well.
Yes.
Are men having issue across the country just being able to speak out their problems and say what really is disturbing them from their innermost part?
I think it would be unfair to say that men are actually suffering and they're not saying. As a country, we have got a problem.
As a whole, both men
As
and
a country, we have got a problem. And you need to see the kind of projection. Just look online. Look out online and see the anger. See the projection out there. See how people get so bitter over very small things, things that are manageable. And people get out of, as in, there's so much anger, and that speaks to a mentally disturbed country. We are a nation of disturbed people, and we've not been very honest about this thing. We have had a mental policy, I think, that came into effect. It was worked on, I think, in 2014 and then came into effect in 2015. It's 2015-2030. We have got a mental health act came into 2018. What we do not have, you know, mental health in itself is one of what, in my opinion, has been neglected even at scientific level. It's not so deep because I was watching a documentary yesterday where some guy says that it's only people who deal with the mind that sometimes don't look at what they're dealing with, like psychologists. They don't look at the brain. They just want to cluster what you're talking about and everything else and then give you medication. And they're saying that recent breakthrough in science actually shows that if you looked at the brain, it will actually tell you, if you did brain scans and such, it will tell you where somebody is and what kind of help they need. But we are still trying to catch up. So it's largely something that we need to work on. I think from where we are now, it's beyond being talking about stigma when you talk about mental health. Right. Because if you talked about mental health, you would be looked at as a weak person initially. Right. But just the way we dealt with HIV, it's now beyond stigma. I think for mental health, it's a big thing. You know, if you see what is happening in church here, this is just but one of those. We saw the other day a major in Nanyuki going the very horrible way. And we have got similar cases going back. But it's also a combination of very many things. The way we are socialized as people, the economic situation, the leadership, the politics of the day. Because people are normally very sober, very brilliant until they get into trouble. Right. And then they are behaving very wildly. The courts too have not been very helpful. There is a lot of activism and a lot of vigilance on that particular end. There is not so much balance. You saw a police officer coming out, and you know that is a very serious cry that needs to be followed through. A police officer who was given a very huge bill to take care of, and he came out and spoke and said, I don't know what the court based on to arrive at this, but this is my salary, this is what I have, and it's become so difficult, I cannot. There is a man who, number one, he should be disarmed. He needs counseling, and somebody should help him so that he gets some legal review of that particular ruling. Right. He is a good man, he has spoken, and somebody might not raise alarm louder than that. So I think it will be good, first of all, for the National Police Service to ensure that he's disarmed. But he's not victimized. Okay. He's taken care of. Because, you know, the court also is actually complicating things. And if we do not talk about those, people go to court and there's a lot of vigilance. Because normally when people separate, there's a lot of venom. Right. Because with matters of the heart, sometimes the head does not really reason around that. There's so much hatred, there's so much venom, and people are bound to hurt each other. So it takes a lot of, I don't want to call it maturity, because what is maturity to you might not be maturity to her. To restrain and to just walk away, it takes a lot of grace, it takes a lot of helping, and it also probably speaks to how we have been brought up. We need to, number one, embrace this particular situation. Look at it as normal health issues. Two, we also need to listen out. I lost a friend, you know, a childhood friend, in Huruma the other day. Unfortunately for him, he put up a post at night, about midnight, and talked about, it was not a very clear one, and says that he have had an opportunity to actually just say bye. In the morning, his car was found on Thika Road. He had crashed. Somebody I know from childhood, and he has always done a lot of Bible verses and such. So in the morning, we are looking at what clearly is a suicide note, and then we are being told he's already gone. So that is midnight. You cannot even intervene. That's what I'm saying. Like for that particular officer who's come out and said, hey, I feel I'm actually pressed.
When we see the signs, we should do something.
Yeah.
We should reach out, because the one thing we do is that, but the friendship has lost meaning. The safe spaces are overrated. Vulnerability, I know within personal development and such, we speak about being vulnerable, having people you can speak to and trust. But as a political animal, I will tell you that the issues I talk to her today with, if we are within political circles and we are together, will be used against me tomorrow. So vulnerability no longer makes sense.
Right.
So probably we need to actually just to grow up. Because, you know, you spoke to me about something, but tomorrow we are not on the same side. I'm hitting you with it from the other end. So I think we also need to have friendship that really matters. People who can stand up with us. And but the friendship is not really about people being perfect. We are not going to have perfect human beings, because none of us is. We are a spoiled human. We are a spoiled species. It's a difficult place to be. But we will need people who stand with us. People who can actually, in private, tell us, here you messed up, but be able to stand up with us. But not joining people to lynch us when it's time to lynch you in public and elsewhere. So it's a complex thing.
Very quickly?
Yeah, because Arnold, you talk about it not being just men, but I'll say why I specifically say men.
Yeah.
Because you did mention it's how we are raised in society.
Yeah.
And you're very vocal online. So am I think we all are. But anytime I discuss politics or anything like that, if I am getting bashed, it will be a man. Out of nowhere. It will not be women, by the way, insulting you, calling you names, they've never met you, and you know this. So I'm just going to ask us to be observant. This whole week, just go online and observe where the insults are coming from, where they're channeled from, and just see whether that's normal, because it's not. And we need to get to understand that sometimes you don't need to insult someone to get a point across, but we're beginning to make it a norm for our young men, and that needs to end.
For this week, it's all about observance.
Kindly.
Let
Let me just respond to that
quickly, because we need to move on. In 1 minute.
Quickly, I will tell you that as a man, I actually get bashed by women. So whereas from her end, she will see men bashing her.
Let's do the
And
research.
I know the truth is also that there's a lot of men who feel inferior. The men are actually full of anger. But I will tell you, yesterday I actually saw a lot of people fighting. And it was feminists and the other people. So there are a lot of words. Like I said, we are an angry nation. It's true, men tend to. It's told that speaking about weakness is like speaking about a backbone that is broken. We are a nation and we are a society of very angry and, I don't want to say injured, but we are just angry.
Okay. What we'll do is make sure this week, as Nerima has said, we shall observe what's happening online and come back with our findings next week. Let's quickly move on because of time. We'll keep our comments brief on this as we get to our last story. On the Business Daily's front page, Cabinet okays 2.5 billion shilling city high-speed train plan. Of course, this is the month where we talk about the traffic is because the children are going back to school and all of these issues, and that's why we can't decongest the city. Is this really what we need as we move forward? Is this a solution? The last time we spoke about a solution for decongesting the city, we got a red streak of paint from the CBD all the way to Thika. The jam is still there. Is this what we need, Nerima? Is this the plan?
I don't think so. Even before we have that, we need to have a culture of using other modes of transport. We're still into cars. We are not even carpooling and things like that. And that culture needs to be put there. I would even say, if we're going to have a high-speed train, I don't understand why SGR is so slow. Like, we can take 2 hours to get to Mombasa. It doesn't have to be 5. So if you're going to tell me that the city one is the high-speed train, and it's costing 2.5 billion, it's probably overpriced.
Right.
Because of how SGR was handled, there's a lack of trust when it comes to our government, when it comes to such initiatives such as this. And then secondly, there's no conversation in terms of how to have a healthier city, healthier living, in terms of coordination and things like that.
Right. Fred, I'll come to you because as we still wait to see the buses that should have been brought in from South Africa for the BRT. To happen, people are wondering, okay, fine, now we haven't even seen the buses yet. How does this work? Because the perception on this, it seems like this is just another scam we're waiting to see.
We are very systematic in this country. We should now move from being systematic to be systemic. Systemic means we must be wholesome. Even this research alone is wrong. It's not 80% of the public transport vehicle that cause traffic jams. If today we said, no, there's a strike there for matatus, you will see the biggest traffic jam ever because of personal cars. It's the personal cars. And as Nerima puts it, do we need everyone to put their vehicle outside there so that we show that we are really affluent? No. We must use the public transport. How do we use public transport? The government must provide for public transport system that will enable the public to board. We have seen in other countries, getting into town is so easy. You jump into a light train, subway, you are where you are. But in this country, our environmental decisions are wrong. The EDMs, if you look at it, the other day they wanted to cut part of the park so that they do an expressway. Because our planning was messed up because of corruption from initial stages. So we must now think, how do we now accommodate ourselves in the smaller space, at the same time become efficient? There are only two ways. Way number one, we must expand our roads. If we are going to move from road to rail, then also we must make those rail high speed. Not just locomotives that are refurbished and then you bring them, then you say, okay, this is what you ordered from Jumia, this is what you get. No, that is not the case. We must now go for the real thing. Lastly, on this issue, there is a bit of tendering, if you have read the story. Our history with tendering is very, very unfortunate. Because when it comes to tendering, the tender is given to the most connected individual who makes money out of it and then triple it, and then before you know it, the project has collapsed. It becomes a white elephant. I want to believe that it's going to be an open tender, number one. It's going to be an issue that will be discussed to the public. Participation of the citizenry must now be involved. How are we going to use it? Do we need it? How do we need it? What are the measures that are put in place to ensure that it works? That is what is going to ensure that it is efficient and it is workable.
Well, Kester, we're looking at it. Of course, January is here. The cars are about to be brought back on the roads. Children back in school. We're talking about a high-speed train plan. Is this the way out? Is this what we need to finally, if you say you're going to be in town in 5 minutes, to get there in 5 minutes courtesy of the high-speed train?
First of all, January, the only cars that are going to be brought out are school buses. It's not personal cars. It's not personal cars. So I think generally with our leadership, I think there's a problem in how we think. Are we strategic enough in how we think and the solutions we prescribe for everything? Right. Is this a necessity as at now? I don't want to believe that it's, you know, one of those desperate moves to leave a legacy still. Because, you know, you're hurting the pocket of the common mananchi, you're hurting the taxpayers to have the 2.5 billion, you know, high-speed train. And are we sure that when we have this high-speed train, that the personal cars are going to reduce? Because it's, as Okango said, it's the personal cars that are causing traffic. So are we going to have, you know, a high-speed train that is going to offer a place that you feel like this, I can take this public transport to work? And that also speaks to, you know, the state of our public transport. Does it even offer dignity in terms of work? Do we even have people who say, you know, this is a job I want to apply for and I want to do it? Is it driven by you coming from a place of lack so that you just do something for the sheer purpose of getting something in your pocket? So, yeah.
Those are the questions that need to be answered. Arnold, I'll come to you and look at the city in the point of view that we've tried so many things. We've moved Matatu terminus outside of the CBD. There's a time we had banned Matatus from coming in. We've done the BRT paint. We're waiting for the buses. Now we have this. But the jam seems not to go away. That's the one thing that's constant. The traffic in Nairobi is known right around the continent. What's the missing link? What are we not looking at that should make us move away from that?
First of all, I need to correct Fred when he says that, first of all, the research is wrong. And he says that he believes that it's the matatus that cause the traffic. When you challenge data, it's not a matter of believing or faith. You have to bring another data. It's data that meets data. The other thing he also said that is also wrong, and you've seen a meme going around about that. Anytime there's a jam, you expand the road. So how many lanes are we going to expand? That essentially is not the solution. Other countries have tried and it doesn't work that way. Primarily, I do not think why this is news. It's 2.5 billion shillings, and I'll tell you honestly, it's little money. It's because that money is actually going on upgrading the existing one. We are not building a new system. You read the story. It says they are upgrading the commuter systems and they are going to bring in trains from Spain. It's an old story that was there last year. They tried to work around this. They're bringing used trains, and they say relatively those trains are better than what we have. And so this is Monday. It's normally a thin news day, so there's not so much, and they brought these 2 billion shillings here. Because why am I saying that? I was part and parcel of, in my other professional life, of planning Nairobi, coming up with the new plan. We have got all the plans to ensure everything done with proper data, with geospatial help. JICA and the Japanese helped us to plan this city completely. Everything they keep on pulling are a subset of what we already did. And we passed it in 2016, and the governor then just packed it. The one who came doesn't even want to talk about the new plan. He's coming up with his own things. When there is a plan to work on Nairobi until 2030, completely done with data, scientifically done, people are coming to benchmark with the planning unit in Nairobi on that particular plan. Even Mombasa had to come. But we are not looking at that. Everything they are pulling over the shelf is what is already there. When we were working on Outer Ring, we agreed that we will, for the first time, have a BRT lane. And by the way, BRT is supposed to be a short-term measure. Because from the data we did was that, the research we did was that you need a bus showing up, a high capacity bus showing up after every 10 minutes to take away the jam in Nairobi. Now, essentially, you realize that is not decongesting the city. If you need a high capacity bus showing up, passing for every 10 minutes, it means that we are increasing. So then what do we do? But then we said, we will do BRT as a short term. So Outer Ring was supposed to come up clearly with a lane for that. By the time the technical drawings and everything was going on, but as it ended up to the tender point, that lane, the BRT lane, had been taken off. So we come up and then start drawing the lines. I'm thinking that particular red line is supposed to remind us to behave well, probably. Or somebody had paint that was supposed to be used, and it's important that it goes out. It was going to expire, right. So we go out. So and then there's the management politics. This thing they call NAMATA, the Nairobi Metropolitan Transport Authority thing that is actually fighting with Nairobi. So they don't want to look at land use. They're actually reasoning like him, saying that we just open the road, we just bring the buses. They don't want to deal with the county government, for example. You're not going to deal with the politics, congestion in Nairobi without, number one, involving Nairobi, Kiambu, Machakos, and Kajiado. So
they all have to be brought into this.
They have to be brought together. You cannot have some agency, I don't want to call it a super agency, some national agency that wants to act like it's over Nairobi, and then you have to go to Kiambu, because 1 million people show up, about 1 million people show up from Kiambu every day, coming to Nairobi. That's a very huge number. There's another guy from Rongai, you know, the neighboring country here, just across the national park. And then from Ngong, guys from Machakos. We need to bring all these people together so that you have to come up with a hub. Everything had been worked around clearly, but the national government, the county government, and then the other, the county governments that are within the Nairobi metropolitan region are not following through. So I don't think this is going to do anything. Somebody is going to get this particular tender, and probably they could, out of 2.5 billion shillings, I'm not sure they can get more than 5 trains.
Okay, we'll have to leave it at that as far as our newspaper review is concerned this morning. Big stories of the day that we've been discussing here. We'd like your views on them as well. You can tweet us at K24TV. Alternatively, if you want to SMS, the line is 21222. That's what we leave with this morning. Andal Maliba, thank you so much for making time this morning. Wilkista Duma, thank you so much as well. Freddy Kokango, as always, thank you so much.
Tomorrow is my birthday, and
tomorrow is your
bonus
birthday.
coming.
What a way to celebrate.
You were born in January.
Thank you so much. Of course, an early birthday to you. I don't know if there'll be any plan for you to receive Miguna as well.
We shall talk about that, not here.
Okay, fantastic stuff. That's where we leave it. We're back with Interactive after the break. This is K24 This Morning.